I caught my wife cheating on me. When I confronted her immediately, she said, "Even your mother knows you are not man enough." I wasn't going to accept this, and my revenge was going to make her question her existence. Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Jason from Indianapolis. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. I'd always thought the worst sound in the world was silence, the kind that sits heavy after a fight, when you're both too stubborn to speak. Turns out I was wrong. The worst sound is a giggle, soft and throaty, slipping through your bedroom door when you're not supposed to be home. It's the sound of your life cracking open, and you don't even know it yet. I'd been on the road for 3 days. Milwaukee, some drab conference room with stale coffee and guys in cheap suits pitching software I didn't need. I'd cut it short, driven 6 hours straight, thinking I'd surprise Lauren with takeout from that Thai place she loves. The paper bag was still warm in my hand, the smell of lemongrass and peanut sauce curling up around me as I climbed the stairs. Our stairs, wooden, creaky, the ones I'd refinished myself 2 summers ago because she said they looked tired. Funny how you remember dumb stuff like that when everything's about to blow apart. The giggle hit me first, then a low murmur, a man's voice, not mine. My stomach twisted, but my brain lagged, scrambling for excuses. Maybe she was on the phone. Maybe it was the TV. I pushed the door open, slow, like I was sneaking into my own house. The takeout slipped an inch in my grip, crinkling loud enough to make me wince. And there she was, Lauren, my wife of 7 years, tangled in our sheets. Our sheets, with Ryan. Ryan from her office, the guy she'd mentioned once, maybe twice, with that breezy laugh of hers. Oh, he's harmless, Dan, just a flirt. Harmless. His shirt was on the floor, her legs draped over his, and they didn't even hear me at first. The room smelled like her jasmine perfume and something muskier, something that wasn't me. My throat burned while climbing fast. Lauren, I said, and it came out hoarse, like I'd been screaming for hours. Her head snapped up, eyes wide, lips parted mid-laugh. Ryan scrambled back, yanking the blanket like it could hide what I'd already seen. She didn't move, just stared at me, her auburn hair spilling over her shoulders, that gold necklace I'd bought her glinting against her skin. Dan, she said, and there it was, the tone. Not guilt, not panic, but annoyance. Like I'd interrupted her favorite show. You're early. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A sharp, barking sound that ricocheted off the walls. Yeah, I said, dropping the takeout. It hit the hardwood with a wet thud, sauce leaking through the bag. Guess I am. Ryan muttered something, probably sorry, though it sounded more like a grunt, and started grabbing his clothes. I didn't look at him. Didn't care. My eyes were locked on her, waiting for the script I'd seen in movies. Tears, apologies, it's not what it looks like. But Lauren? She sat up straighter, pulling the sheet around her like a queen adjusting her robe, and smirked. You gonna stand there gawking, or what? She said. Her voice was ice, sharp enough to cut. Say something, Dan. Be a man about it. Be a man. The words landed like a slap, but I was too stunned to swing back. You're screwing him in our bed, I said, slow, testing the reality of it. And I'm the one who's got to say something? She rolled her damn eyes, and that's when it came. The line I'll never unhear. Even your mother knows you're not man enough, she said, leaning forward, her voice dripping venom. She's told me herself, how she wishes I'd picked someone with a spine. Marrying only you? That's my disadvantage, Dan. Always has been. My mother. The room tilted, the air thinning like I'd been punched in the gut. I saw Ryan freeze halfway into his jeans, glancing between us like he'd stumbled into a war zone. I wanted to ask when, how, what the hell did she mean? But my tongue felt thick, useless. Lauren just watched me, daring me to crack. I didn't. Not there. I turned, grabbed my duffel from the hall, still packed from the trip, and walked out. Her laugh followed me, low and mocking, chasing me down the stairs. Ryan called after me, something about talking it out, but I didn't stop. The front door slammed behind me, the sound echoing in my skull as I hit the driveway. My truck was still warm from the drive, keys jangling in my shaking hand. I got in, cranked the engine, and peeled out, the streetlights blurring into streaks. I didn't know where I was going, just away. The Thai food sat back there, soaking into the floorboards of our bedroom, and I pictured her stepping over it, barefoot, smug. My chest ached, a tight coil of fury and shame winding tighter with every mile. My mother, had she really said that? Or was Lauren just twisting the knife? I didn't know, and that was the worst part. 7 years of late nights at the office, of saving for that house, of swallowing her jabs because I thought that's what love looked like. And she'd been laughing at me the whole time. I ended up at a motel off the highway, the kind with flickering neon and a clerk who didn't look up from his phone. The room smelled like mildew and old cigarettes, the bed sagging under me as I dropped my bag. I didn't unpack, just sat there, staring at the peeling wallpaper, her words looping in my head. Not man enough. Disadvantage. My phone buzzed, Lauren, then my mom, then Lauren again. I let it ring, each vibration a pinprick against my ribs. I could have gone back. Could have yelled, thrown things, demanded answers. But what's the point when the truth's already bare-assed in front of you? No, I wasn't going back, not to her, not to that life. I reached for my laptop, flipped it open, and started typing. Mark's number was in my contacts, my old college buddy, the shark lawyer who'd always said I was too soft. He'd know what to do. The screen glowed blue in the dark, and I felt something shift, like the first crack in a dam. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She wanted a man? She'd get one. Just not the one she expected. The motel room was a coffin, low ceiling, stained carpet, a hum from the vending machine outside that buzzed like a trapped fly. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop balanced on my knees, the blue light cutting shadows across my face. My hands hovered over the keys, trembling not from fear, not anymore, but from something hotter, something that felt like it could melt steel. Lauren's voice looped in my skull, not man enough. Disadvantage. Every word a match, lighting up years of memories I'd let slide. I'd always been the steady one. The guy who paid the bills, fixed the leaks, nodded when she complained about her job or my hours. I'd built a life for us, brick by brick, thinking that's what love was, showing up, staying put. But tonight, staring at that screen, I saw it for what it was, a cage. And she just kicked the door wide open. My phone lit up again, Lauren's name flashing, then my mom's, then Lauren's again. 15 missed calls now, piling up like accusations. I flipped it face down on the nightstand, the buzz muffled against the cheap wood. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her fake tears. Didn't want to hear my mom stammer through whatever she'd said, or hadn't said, behind my back. Not yet. I needed to think, to move, to do something before the weight of it all crushed me. Mark's number was still in my recent calls. Last time we talked was months ago, beers at some dive bar, him ribbing me about my boring married life. He'd always been the opposite of me. Sharp, reckless, the kind of guy who'd sue a shark for biting him and win. I hit dial, the ringtone crackling through the silence. It was late, past midnight, but Mark picked up on the third ring, voice gravelly like I'd woken him. Dan? What the hell, man? You okay? No, I said, and my voice sounded foreign, low, steady, none of the shake I felt inside. Lauren screwing some guy in our bed. I walked out. I need you. A pause, then a rustle of sheets, maybe him sitting up. Jesus. Okay, hold on. You mean right now screwing, or caught her tonight? She didn't even flinch, Mark. Told me I'm not man enough. Said my mom thinks so too. He whistled, long and low. That's cold. Even for her. Where are you? Motel off 94. Doesn't matter. I'm done. I want out. Divorce. Everything. Can you make it fast? Fast? He laughed, sharp and dry. Buddy, I can make it brutal. You sure? This is scorched earth. You don't come back from this. I stared at the wall, the peeling paint curling like old skin. Scorched earth. I pictured the house, our house, the one I'd poured my inheritance into, the one she'd decorated with her overpriced taste. I pictured her in it, smug, thinking she'd won. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. All right. Give me a sec. I heard him moving, A clatter like he was grabbing his laptop too. Divorce papers first. Infidelity's a slam dunk if you've got proof. You see it happen. Clear as day. Good enough. I'll draft it tonight, get a process server on it by morning. What else? The house, I said, the idea hitting me like a brick. Sell it. Now. Now. His voice spiked. Dan, it's 1AM real estate, doesn't? You've got that cash buyer, don't you? The one you mentioned last month? Flipping properties? Call him. A beat of silence. You're serious. That's her inheritance, man. Your dad's gonna lose his mind. Let him. It's in my name. She doesn't get a dime. Mark chuckled, dark and approving. Okay, you twisted bastard. I've got a guy, vulture type, loves a quick deal. I'll wake him up, push it through. You'll take a hit on the price, but it'll be gone by sunrise. Anything else? Accounts, I said, my mind racing now, gears clicking into place. Freeze them. Joint stuff, checking, savings, credit cards. All of it. Done. I'll call the bank at dawn. Pull some strings. She'll wake up broke. He paused, then softer. You holding up? I didn't answer right away. Was I? My chest felt tight, my pulse hammering, but it wasn't panic. It was power, raw and unfamiliar. I will be, I said. Just get it moving. On it. Sit tight. I'll call you when it's rolling. The line went dead, and I leaned back, the headboard creaking under me. The room was still, just the vending machine's hum and my own breathing. I closed the laptop, darkness swallowing the glow, and let my head tip back. For the first time in hours, I exhaled, long, slow, like I'd been holding it since I opened that bedroom door. Sleep wasn't coming, though. My brain was a live wire, sparking with every slight she'd ever thrown my way. The time she'd laughed at my old truck, saying it fit me steady, dull. The weekends I'd spent working overtime while she shopped with my card. The way she'd sigh when I kissed her, like it was a chore. I'd chalked it up to marriage, ups and downs, right? But now I saw it. She'd been tallying my worth, and I'd never measured up. My mom's name flickered in my mind, and I clenched my jaw. Had she really said that? She'd always liked Lauren too much, maybe. The family dinners where they'd giggle over wine, leaving me and Dad to talk sports. The little comments. Lauren's got such spark, Dan. Keeps you on your toes. Was that code? A nudge? Or was Lauren lying, tossing grenades to watch me burn? I stood, pacing the tiny room, 5 steps to the window, 5 back. The neon sign outside blinked, vacancy, red light bleeding through the blinds. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, stubbled dark against pale skin. I didn't recognize myself, not the Dan who'd left for Milwaukee 3 days ago, the one who'd smiled at Lauren's last text. Miss you, babe. Lies. All of it. The phone buzzed again. Lauren, relentless. I grabbed it, thumb hovering over block. Her face popped up, that photo from our honeymoon. Her in a sundress, wind in her hair, me grinning like an idiot. 7 years. I pressed the button, and she vanished. Call silenced, number gone. My mom's came next. Buzz, block, gone. Dad's too, just in case. The quiet hit hard, but it felt right. Clean. Mark's text came at 3:17 a.m. Papers drafted. Buyers in. House gone by 6. Bank next. You're a ghost now. I read it twice, the words sinking in. A ghost. That's what I'd be. No ties, no mercy. Lauren wanted a man. She'd get one. A shadow slipping out of her life, leaving nothing but ash. I tossed the phone down, grabbed my keys. Sleep could wait. I needed air, needed to breathe this new me into existence. The truck roared to life outside, and I pulled onto the highway, headlights cutting through the dark. Dawn was coming, and with it, her reckoning. The highway stretched out ahead of me, a black ribbon under a sky bruising purple with dawn. My truck's engine growled low, steady, the only sound I wanted, just me and the road. No voices, no buzzing phone. I'd driven an hour out from the motel, no destination, just motion. The air through the cracked window was cold, sharp, biting at my knuckles on the wheel. It felt good, like it was waking me up, peeling back the fog of last night. Lauren's face flickered in my mind. Those wide eyes when I caught her, that smirk when she cut me down. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles whitening. She'd see soon enough what not man enough could do. My phone was off now, battery drained from ignoring her calls. Mark's text sat in my memory like a loaded gun. Papers drafted. Buyers in, house gone by 6. Bank next. It was 5:48 a.m. when I pulled into a gas station, the neon glow of the pumps buzzing like a heartbeat. I filled the tank, the smell of gasoline cutting through the crisp air, and grabbed a coffee from the clerk, a kid with acne scars who didn't even glance up. The cup burned my palm, but I didn't care. Pain was grounding me today. Back in the truck, I sipped the coffee, bitter, scalding, and pictured her waking up. The house quiet, Ryan gone, that Thai food still congealing on the floor. She'd roll over, stretch, maybe think she'd won, until the doorbell rang. I smirked into the steam. Mark was fast. Brutal, like he'd promised. I could almost hear it, the sharp rap of knuckles on wood, her stumbling down in that silk robe she loved, hair a mess, expecting me crawling back. Instead, she'd get a stranger with a clipboard and a stack of papers to sign her life away. I didn't see it, of course. I was 50 miles out, idling at a pump, but I knew how it'd go. She'd open the door, squinting into the morning light, and there'd be the process server. Some guy in a cheap suit, probably, voice flat as he handed her the envelope. Lauren Ellis, you've been served. Divorce papers, cold and legal, spelling out infidelity in black ink. She'd stare at them, uncomprehending because who moves this fast? Not the Dan she knew, the one who'd wait out her tantrums, who'd apologize first just to keep the peace. That Dan was dead now, buried under the wreckage of her betrayal. I leaned back, the seat creaking under me, and let the scene play out in my head. She'd ripped the envelope open, skimmed the pages, her lips parting, breath catching as it hit her. No discussion, no negotiation, just done. She'd call my name, maybe, like I'd materialized to explain myself. But I wouldn't. I was here, sipping burnt coffee, watching the sun claw its way up the horizon, while she stood in that doorway, alone. Mark had said the house would be gone by 6. I checked my watch, 6:03. Somewhere back there, a real estate vulture was already wiring cash, signing deeds, stripping her of the walls she'd painted, the kitchen she'd barely used. I wondered if she'd noticed the sold sign popping up in the yard, stark red against the grass I'd mowed every Saturday. Would she scream? Cry? Call Ryan to fix it? I snorted into my cup. Ryan. That weasel wouldn't stick around for the fallout. He'd be halfway across town by now, pants on and tail between his legs. My phone was dead, but I didn't need it. I could feel her panic from here, radiating across the miles. She'd try my number first, over and over, then texts, begging, cursing, whatever worked. When that failed, she'd call my parents. That's what she'd do, run to them, spin some sob story about me losing my mind. I tilted my head, cracking my neck, and wondered what they'd say. Mom, with her soft voice and guilt trips. Dad, gruff and quick to judge. Had Mom really told her I wasn't man enough? The thought gnawed at me, a splinter I couldn't dig out. I'd deal with them later. For now, Lauren was the target. I started the truck again, pulling back onto the highway. The coffee sloshed in its cup, the dashboard rattling with every bump. Mark would hit the banks next, joint accounts frozen, credit cards cut off. She'd wake up broke, her precious safety net yanked out from under her. I pictured her swiping a card at some boutique later, the clerk's awkward shrug when it declined. Her face, God, I'd have paid to see it. That smug mask cracking, eyes darting, realizing she had nothing left to play with. The sun was up now, a thin gold line bleeding into the sky. I turned the radio on, static hissing before landing on some old rock song. Guitars wailing, lyrics about losing it all. Fitting. I cranked it, let it drown the hum in my head. My hands were steady now, the tremble gone. This wasn't just revenge. It was surgery, precise and deep, cutting out the rot. She'd pushed me too far, and I wasn't stopping. Back at the house, or what used to be mine, she'd be pacing by now. I could see her flipping through the papers, yelling into her phone. She'd call my mom again, probably got through this time. He's lost it, Carol, she'd say, voice shaking for effect. He's selling the house, cutting me off, he's insane. Mom would hesitate, I bet. She'd always had a soft spot for Lauren, too soft. Let me talk to him, she'd say, but Lauren wouldn't have my new number. Neither would she. I smirked again, harder this time, the coffee cooling in my hand. My parents could wait. They'd picked their side, or hadn't picked one, which was worse. I'd built that life for all of them. Lauren, Mom, Dad, and they'd let it fester. No more. The highway curved ahead, trees flashing by, and I felt lighter, like I'd shed a skin I didn't know was choking me. Mark's next update would come soon. Banks locked, papers served, house gone. I'd need a place to crash, something permanent, but not yet. For now, I drove, the road unspooling like a promise. Lauren thought she'd broken me. She'd all see what breaking me really meant. Then my burner phone buzzed, a cheap thing I'd grabbed at the gas station. Mark's number lit up the screen. I answered, one hand on the wheel, and his voice crackled through. It's done, man. She's got nothing. But your dad's on my ass already. Says you've gone too far. I laughed, cold and sharp, the sound bouncing off the windshield. Too far. I hadn't even started. The new apartment smelled like fresh paint and regret, sharp, chemical, clinging to the back of my throat. It was a one-bedroom box, bare walls and cheap linoleum, a week's worth of my life stuffed into cardboard boxes stacked by the door. I'd signed the lease blind, some online listing Mark had found, because I couldn't stomach another night in a motel with its stained sheets and ghosts. The burner phone sat on the counter, silent since his last update. Banks locked. Papers served. House gone. That was 3 days ago. I'd been a ghost since, dodging calls, dodging everything until now. The knock came at 10 a.m., soft but insistent, like someone testing if I'd bite. I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips, the brew gone cold in my hand. No one knew this address, not Lauren, not Mark, not even the mailman yet. My pulse kicked up, a dull thud in my ears. I set the mug down, the clink loud in the empty space, and crossed to the door. Through the peephole, I saw her, Mom, gray hair pulled back. I was darting like she was casing the joint. She knocked again, louder, and I cursed under my breath. How the hell had she found me? I opened the door, slow, the hinges whining. She stood there in her old wool coat, the one she'd worn every winter since I was a kid, hands clasped tight around her purse. Her face was softer than I'd expected, lines deeper, eyes red-rimmed, but I didn't budge. Dan, she said, voice cracking like thin ice. Can I come in? I wanted to say no. Wanted to slam the door and let the silence swallow her. But something in her tremble, the way her shoulders hunched, pulled me back to 100 Sunday dinners, her voice calling me down for meatloaf. I stepped aside, jaw tight. Make it quick. She shuffled in, glancing around like she was cataloging the emptiness. Boxes, a folding chair, the mattress still in plastic on the floor. This is it, she said, more to herself than me. You're living like this? It's mine, I said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. That's what matters. How'd you find me? Mark, she admitted, eyes flicking to the floor. He didn't want to tell me, but I begged. Said you'd moved. I had to see you. I snorted, bitter. Mark's got a big mouth. What do you want, Mom? She flinched, like the word stung, then sank into the chair, the only seat I had. I want to explain, she said, fingers twisting the strap of her purse. About Lauren. About what she said. That splinter in my chest, the one her name had lodged there, twisted deeper. So it's true, I said, voice low, dangerous. You told her I'm not man enough. No. She looked up, eyes wide, pleading. Not like that. Never like that, Dan. She twisted it. I swear. We talk sometimes, over wine, and I'd say things, dumb things. How I worried you worked too hard, how you were so steady, maybe too steady. I said I wished you'd fight more, push back. She took it and ran with it. Steady, I echoed, tasting the word like ash. That's what I was for you, for all of you. Steady Dan, fixing the house, paying the bills, taking her crap. And you're sitting there, sipping wine with her, wishing I'd, what? Punch walls? Cheap back. Her hand shook, tears spilling now, but I didn't soften. I was trying to help, she said. She'd complain about you, about the marriage, and I'd listen. I thought I was keeping peace. Then last year, at Easter, I saw her with that guy Orion, outside by the shed. Too close, laughing too loud. I told you after, remember? I said she was trouble. I did remember, vague, fuzzy, her pulling me aside while Dad carved the ham. She's got a wild streak, Dan. Be careful. I laughed it off, kissed her forehead, said Lauren was just Lauren. My stomach churned now, acid climbing. You didn't push, I said. You dropped a hint and let it go. Why? Because you loved her. She cried, voice breaking. You lit up when she walked in, even when she didn't deserve it. I didn't want to break your heart. I thought you'd see it yourself, eventually. Eventually, I spat, pacing now, the linoleum cold under my socks. 7 years, Mom. 7 years of her chipping away at me, and you watched. You all watched, her and Dad and me, playing house while she screwed around. And now you're here. What? To say sorry. Yes, she whispered, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a photo. Me, maybe 10, grinning on the front porch of the old house, gap-toothed and sunburned. I should have fought for you. I failed you, Dan. I'm so sorry. The photo hit me like a punch. Those steps, that porch, the house I'd sold out from under them all. My throat tightened, but I didn't take it. Keep it, I said, turning away, staring at the blank wall. I don't need reminders. Dan, please, she said, standing now, voice desperate. Don't shut me out. Your father, he's furious about the house. Says it's his legacy, says you've gone too far. But I told him you're hurting. We can fix this. Fix it. I wheeled on her, heat flooding my chest. The house is gone. Lauren's gone. You don't get it. It's not about fixing. It's about ending. You let her poison everything, and Dad. He cared more about that damn house than me. Where was he when she was laughing at me? Where were you? She flinched again, tears streaming, but I was past caring. We tried, she said, weak. We just tried. I cut in, voice steel. Not hard enough. Get out, Mom. I've got nothing left for you. She froze, then nodded, slow, clutching the photo like a lifeline. She moved to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. I love you, she said, so quiet I almost missed it. Then she was gone, the door clicking shut, leaving me in silence thicker than before. I sank onto the mattress, head in my hands. The paint smell burned my lungs, the photo's image searing my mind. Steady, Dan. Too steady, until now. My burner buzzed, mark again. I grabbed it, voice rough. Yeah? Your dad's blowing up my phone, he said, tense. Showed up at my office, screaming about the house. Says he's coming for you next. I laughed, hollow, the sound bouncing off the bare walls. Let him come. I was ready. The coffee shop smelled like burnt beans and desperation fitting, since I'd picked it for the meeting. It was a hole-in-the-wall joint 2 towns over, all chipped mugs and sticky tables, the kind of place Lauren would have sneered at in her old life. I sat in the back, put up, nursing a black coffee that tasted like tar. 2 weeks had passed since the papers hit, since I'd torched our world and walked away. 2 weeks of silence, broken only by Mark's updates, divorce filing solid. She's got nothing. I kept moving, new apartment, new number, new me, until yesterday, when a mutual friend, Jake, tracked me down. She's a wreck, man, he'd said, voice tight over the phone. Begging to see you. Just hear her out. I'd almost hung up. Almost. But something, curiosity, maybe, or the itch to see her squirm, made me say yes. So here I was, 2 p.m. sharp, watching the door through the steam curling off my cup. The bell jangled, and there she was, Lauren, stepping in like a ghost of herself. No silk robe, no sleek hair, her auburn waves were tangled, her jacket thrift store thin, eyes sunken behind smudge mascara. She spotted me, hesitated, then shuffled over, heels clicking unevenly on the warped floor. Dan, she said, voice hoarse, like she'd been yelling or crying or both. She slid into the seat across from me, hands trembling as she set her purse down. It was cheap, fake leather, not the designer crap she used to flaunt. Thanks for meeting me. I didn't answer, just sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. Her eyes darted, table, window, my face, searching for a crack to slip through. She wouldn't find one. Not today. You look different, she tried, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Rougher. It's good. Cut the crap, Lauren, I said, low and flat, setting the mug down with a thunk. What do you want? She flinched, the smile crumbling. I want to talk. About us. About what happened. Us. I leaned back, arms crossing, the chair creaking under me. There's no us. You made that clear when I caught you with Ryan. Her lips parted, a shaky breath slipping out. That was a mistake, Dan. A stupid, awful mistake. I was lost, I didn't know what I had till it was gone. I laughed sharp, barking, loud enough to turn heads at the counter. Lost? You weren't lost when you smirked at me, when you said I wasn't man enough. You knew exactly what you were doing. I didn't mean it, she cried, leaning forward, hands splaying on the table. Her nails were chipped, no polish, another casualty. I was mad, caught off guard. I lashed out. I'm sorry, okay? I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't unscrew your boyfriend in our bed, I said, voice steel. Sorry doesn't undo 7 years of you treating me like a bank account with legs. She flinched again, tears welling now, spilling over. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But you destroyed me, Dan. The house, the money, everything gone overnight. I've got nothing left. I'm evicted, sleeping on a friend's couch, eating ramen. Ryan dumped me the second it got messy. I'm begging you, give me a chance to fix this. I stared at her, letting her words hang there, heavy and wet. The tears were real as snotty, messy, streaking her face, but I'd seen this play before. The damsel act, the quiver in her lip she'd used to get new shoes, a weekend away, my silence when she snapped. I leaned in, slow, elbows on the table, voice dropping to a whisper. You think I did this to you? You did it to yourself. You gambled on me being too soft to fight back. You lost. Dan, please, she said, grabbing my arm across the table. Her fingers were cold, desperate, digging into my sleeve. We can start over. I'll change. I'll be better. I love you. I yanked my arm free, the motion sharp enough to rattle the mucks. Love, I said, standing now, towering over her. You don't know what that word means. You loved the house, the cards, the life I built. You didn't love me. You tolerated me till something shinier came along. She sobbed, head dropping into her hands, shoulders shaking. People stared now, barista, an old guy with a newspaper, but I didn't care. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and tossed it onto the table. It landed with a soft slap. Here's something for you, I said. Proof of donation. 50 grand from the house sale, straight to that women's shelter you always called a waste of space. Figured it'd sting more than keeping it. Her head snapped up, eyes wide, tears streaking through the shock. You, what? You gave it away? To them? Yeah, I said, smirking now, cold and deliberate. Every cent I could have sent your way. Sleep tight on that couch knowing it's helping someone who deserves it. You bastard, she hissed, voice breaking into a snarl. She lunged for the paper, crumpling it in her fist, but it didn't change the truth. You're cruel. You're worse than I ever was. Cruel. I stepped closer, voice a low growl. Cruel was you laughing at me while I stood there, gutted. Cruel was you thinking you could play me forever. I'm just the guy who stopped playing. I turned, heading for the door, her sobs rising behind me, hysterical, jagged. Dan, wait, she yelled, chair scraping as she stood. You can't just leave me like this. I paused, hand on the knob, the bell jingling above me. Watch me, I said, not looking back. The door swung shut, cutting off her wail, and I stepped into the gray afternoon, air cold against my face. My truck waited across the street, engine coughing to life as I climbed in. I didn't glance at the shop, didn't need to. She was done, a shadow shrinking in my rear view. The burner buzzed as I pulled away, Mark again. You good? He asked when I picked up, his voice tight. Better than ever, I said, a grin tugging at my lips. She's out. Good. 'Cause your dad's not. He's at your place now. Says he's not leaving till you talk. I gripped the wheel, the grin fading. Dad. The last domino. Let him wait, I said. I'm coming. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. Highway lines bleeding into dusk, the truck's rumble a steady pulse under my hands. Lauren's sobs still echoed in my head, faint now, like a radio signal fading out. I'd left her there, crumpled in that coffee shop, the donation paper a dagger I'd twisted just for her. It felt good, damn good, watching her mask shatter, her world shrink to nothing. But as the miles ticked by, something else crept in, a hollow ache, not for her, but for the me I'd been. The guy who'd let it all happen. I pulled into the lot, the building's chipped brick looming under sodium lights. Dad's old Chevy was parked crooked across 2 spaces. Typical, him staking claim like he owned the place. Mark's warning rang fresh. He's not leaving till you talk. I killed the engine, sat there a minute, the keys biting into my palm. Part of me wanted to march up, throw him out, keep the fire roaring. But my legs felt heavy, my chest tight, like the fight was leaking out of me. Not surrender, just exhaustion. I grabbed my burner and headed up, the stairwell smelling of damp concrete and stale smoke. The door was unlocked when I got there. Dad's doing, no doubt. He stood in the middle of the room, broad shoulders hunched, flannel shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. The photo Mom had brought was on the counter, that kid me grinning up at us both. He didn't turn when I walked in, just kept staring at the boxes, the bare walls, like he could will the old house back into existence. You sold it, he said finally, voice rough, low, the growl I'd grown up fearing. My father's house. Your grandfather's. Gone just like that. I shut the door, the click loud in the silence. Yeah, I said, leaning against it, arms crossed. I did. He wheeled on me then, eyes bloodshot, fist clenched at his sides. What the hell's wrong with you, Dan? You think this is a game? You think you can erase us, me, your mother, everything, because your wife's a tramp? She's not my wife anymore, I said, steady, meeting his glare. And it's not about you. It's about me. What I needed to do. Needed? He barked a laugh, bitter and jagged. You needed to spit on your family? That house wasn't just yours, it was ours. Mine. You had no right. No right? I stepped forward, heat flaring again, but slower this time, controlled. It was in my name, Dad. My inheritance, my money, my sweat keeping it standing while she partied in it. Where were you when she was tearing me down? Watching football? Telling me to man up. He flinched, just a flicker, but I saw it. I didn't know, he said, quieter now, deflating. Not the details. Your mother, she suspected. But we didn't think. You didn't want to think. I cut in, voice rising. Neither of you. You liked her, both of you. The spark, the charm, the way she filled a room. You let her walk all over me because it was easier than facing it. He stared at me, jaw working, no words coming. Then he sank onto the folding chair, the creak loud in the stillness. We failed you, he said, so low I almost missed it. I see that now. But this isn't you, Dan. Running, destroying, it's not who you are. I laughed, soft, hollow, pacing the room. The linoleum was cold under my boots, the paint smelled fainter now, fading like the past. Maybe it is, I said. Maybe it's who I've been all along, buried under steady Dan. The guy who took it, who smiled, who built a life for everyone else to trash. I'm done with that. He didn't answer, just watched me, hands limp in his lap. I stopped by the window, the glass streaked with rain that had started falling. Soft taps against the pane. My reflection stared back, sharper now, edges I hadn't seen before. I thought of Lauren, her tears, her begging, and Mom's guilt, Dad's anger. They'd all shaped me, pressed me into something small, safe. But I'd broken the mold, and it hurt like hell, but it felt right. I'm starting something, I said, half to him, half to myself. A business, tech stuff, risky, something I'd have never touched before. I've got the cash from the house, the brains to pull it off. I'm not running, I'm building. He looked up, surprise cracking his scowl. Risky? You. Yeah, I said, turning to him, a smirk tugging my lips. Me. Turns out I've got a spine after all. He nodded, slow, like he was seeing me for the first time. Good, he said, standing, voice gruff again but softer. Don't let us hold you back. Not anymore. He grabbed the photo, hesitated, then tucked it into his pocket. Your mother, she's a mess. Loves you, though? We both do. He moved to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. Don't be a stranger, Dan. Not forever. The door shut behind him, and I stood there, rain drumming louder now, washing the world outside. I sank onto the mattress, still wrapped in plastic, the crinkle sharp under me. My head tipped back, eyes tracing cracks in the ceiling I hadn't noticed before. Flashbacks hit. Lauren laughing at a bonfire, her hand in mine. Mom's meatloaf steaming on the table. Dad teaching me to swing a hammer. Good moments, buried under the rot. I'd ignored the signs, her distance, their silence, because I'd wanted the picture, not the truth. The photo flickered in my mind. Kid me, gap-toothed, clueless. I slid off the mattress, grabbed it from the counter where he'd left it after all. My fingers brushed the edges, worn soft from years. I wasn't that kid anymore. But I wasn't the old Dan either. I opened a box, tucked the photo inside, not buried, just stored. A piece, not the whole. The burner buzzed. Mark, probably, but I didn't check. I needed this moment, this quiet. The divorce was days from final, the money mine, the future wide open. I burned it all down, and now I'd build. Something mine, something fearless. The rain slowed, a drip against the sill, and I felt it. Peace, sharp and new, cutting through the wreckage. Then the phone buzzed again, insistent. I grabbed it. Frowning, Mark's voice crackled through. Papers are signed. You're free. But Lauren, she sent something. You're going to want to hear this. The rain had stopped by the time I got to the park, a muddy strip of green tucked behind the city's edge. Dusk painted the sky orange, bleeding into purple, the air thick with wet grass and wood smoke. I'd grabbed my fire pit from storage, a dented old thing I'd hauled from the house before it sold, and set it up near the trees, the clang of metal echoing as I dropped it into place. Mark's call still buzzed in my head. Papers signed. You're free. But Lauren, she sent something. He'd forwarded it to my burner. A letter, he said, her last gasp. I hadn't read it yet, wanted to do this right, out here, where the past could burn clean. I piled the kindling, twigs I'd snapped off low branches, dry enough to crackle, and struck a match. The flame caught fast, licking up the wood, a soft hiss rising as smoke curled into the chill. My boots sank into the damp earth, the cold seeping through as I crouched by the pit, feeding it sticks. 3 months since I'd walked out, 3 months of divorce lawyers, bank transfers, and a new life clawing its way up from the ashes. The business was rolling now, tech consulting, high risk, high reward, the kind of thing old Dan would have balked at. I'd shed weight, too, not just pounds, but the heaviness of years playing it safe. The mirror showed a leaner me, sharper, eyes that didn't flinch anymore. The burner sat in my pocket, heavy with her words I hadn't faced yet. I pulled it out, the screen glowing harsh against the firelight, and opened Mark's message. Attached was a scan, her handwriting, tight and messy, scrawled across a single page. I hesitated, the flame snapping beside me, then started reading aloud, low, like I was testing the air. Dan, it began, her voice creeping into mine. I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I've lost everything, my home, my friends, my pride. You won, okay? You proved you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I was wrong about you, about us. I thought I needed more, but I didn't see what I had. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know that's gone. Just know I loved you, in my messed up way. I'm leaving town, starting over. Maybe you can too. Lauren. I stopped, the paper trembling in my hand, not from cold, but from the laugh bubbling up, dark and dry. Loved me? In her messed up way? I pictured her writing this, hunched over some borrowed table, mascara streaking as she played the martyr. It was pure Lauren, half confession, half manipulation, tossing love like a lifeline she hoped I'd grab. I'd spent years swallowing her lines, bending to her whims, but not now. Not ever again. The fire popped, spitting embers into the dusk, and I smirked, folding the letter tight. You don't get the last word, I said, voice steady, tossing it into the pit. The flames grabbed it fast, edges curling black, her scrawl charring into nothing. I watched it burn, the smoke stinging my eyes, a thin wisp rising like a ghost set free. She was gone, really gone. Papers signed, ties cut, her shadow shrinking to ash. The heat warmed my face, a quiet roar filling the silence, and I felt it. Not just relief, but victory. She'd wanted to break me, remake me in her image. Instead, I'd remade myself. I stood, stretching, the crack of my spine loud in the still air. The city skyline winked ahead, lights flickering alive, a hum of life I was part of now, not just watching. The business was picking up, first client last week, a startup needing my code, my grit. Risky, yeah, but it lit me up in ways the old grind never had. I'd banked most of the house cash, kept the shelter donation as my middle finger to her memory. Mark had laughed when I told him, "You're a bastard, Dan, but a smart one." Damn right. My mind drifted to Mom, Dad, that fractured goodbye in the apartment. Dad's gruff nod, Mom's tears, the photo I'd tucked away. I hadn't called them, not yet. The wound was still raw, Their silence a scar I'd carry. But Dad's words stuck. Don't be a stranger. Maybe I wouldn't be, not forever. Time would tell. For now, I was enough, me, alone, standing taller than I'd ever thought possible. The fire dwindled, logs collapsing into glowing coals, and I kicked dirt over it, the hiss sharp as it died. My breath fogged in the cold, a white plume curling up. I muttered, man enough, half to the night, half to the kid in that photo, the one who'd grown into this. It wasn't a question anymore, it was a fact, carved into me by every choice I'd made since that bedroom door swung open. I grabbed the pit, still warm, and hauled it to the truck, the clang of it hitting the bed a punctuation mark. The burner buzzed, mark again, probably checking in, but I let it ring, climbing into the cab. The engine growled to life, headlights slicing through the dark as I pulled onto the road. The skyline loomed closer, a jagged promise, and I felt the shift past behind me, future ahead, mine to shape. Lauren's letter was ash now, scattered under the trees, and with it, the weight of her words, her betrayal. I'd burned it all, house, marriage, the me I'd hated, and walked out stronger. The truck rumbled, tires humming against asphalt, carrying me into whatever came next. I didn't look back, didn't need to. The fire was out, but I was just getting started. And that's where Daniel's story ends, or maybe where it begins. What do you think? Did he go too far? Or was this the reckoning Lauren deserved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone. If you loved this ride, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next tale. Got a story you'd love me to tell? Let me know. Your ideas could be next. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.